Prime Minister's questions today was dominated by law and order and I suppose by jibes that there wasn't a defection from the Conservative Party to the Labour Party. Did this mean that Keir Starmer was losing his touch rather more than Rishi Sunak was losing his members of Parliament? Maybe it was just simply a matter of bad timing. But Keir Starmer did bring up the issue of whether or not people who were released early from prisons were likely to reoffend or were a danger to the public. And this was particularly in the light of a recent report from Lewes Prison in the Isle of Wight, which has been inspected twice and is still found to be in need of real improvement, and that it's still found to be, quote, trapped in a cycle of staffing shortfalls, boredom, drugs, driving, rising violence, and self-harm. Too many men were released homeless and inevitably recalled very shortly thereafter. None of this is unique. Reception prisons up and down the country continue to be on the front line of the current population crisis, grappling with increasingly transient populations, aging infrastructure, and a lack of activity places for the populations that they are being asked to hold. This is a disaster, and it's being managed by the present government. Starmer says that that this is a problem, and in return, Sunak says Starmer can't be trusted to keep this country safe. Well, nor can Sunak. And this is the same sort of thing when the Monday speech about international security. Both Starmer and Sunak are committed to defence spending. But do we feel safer? Do we feel safer when the promises are one thing and the rhetoric is another, when there's a difference between the promises and the reality, when there's a difference between the rhetoric and the delivery? And probably the best of the jibes, doesn't he think that rather than confiscating lanyards like some jumped up milk monitor, he should stop issuing get out of jail free cards to prisoners considered a risk to children? I think it's a good point. The lanyard obsession is madness. This is an Esther McVeigh thing, and it should be ditched rather like Esther McVeigh. Stephen Flynn asked for an apology from Sunak for comparing Scottish nationalist to Vladimir Putin during his speech on Monday. And Sunak was very reluctant to do that. But then the whole concept of an apology has disappeared from our national vocabulary. The line is, "I'm sorry you're upset." Well, that's not an apology at all. That's a patronising put-down. And Richard Burgon, Rosina Allin-Khan raised the issues of Gaza and Israel's attacks on Gaza and why British arms sales continue and whether the UK is letting Israel get away with breaking international law. And again, Sunak's response is bland, and he fails to. There is a defence there, really, but Sunak fails to articulate it. He simply repeats the slogan that Israel's got a right to self-defence, which may be true, but these things are nuanced, and unless we deal with the nuance, and unless we also deal with the issues that Netanyahu's solutions are not a solution, we can't deal with the questions, and Sunak clearly can't deal with the questions. So PMQs this morning was a bit of a wet squib, and a bit of a bit useless. Neither Starmer nor Sunak really scored, And both were ducking the issues. The only person, again, with any sense is Flynn. Maybe he should be running the country.